Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our beginners podcast. It's the Alliance of Independent Authors here. I'm Orna Ross and I'm with Dan Parsons. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Orna. Hi, everyone.
Hello there. Yes, and we are back this week to talk about another topic for our beginner self-publishers. And this is the podcast where we focus on people who are just starting out, or just starting out with the particular topic that we're talking about. Because you can, of course, be self-publishing for a while and find out that there are things that you didn't know about or hadn't had time to get to when you first went out there. And today, our topic is going to be author platform, which is something that confuses a lot of people. A lot of people wonder about what on earth is it? Where do I get one? Can I have one now, please? All of that kind of thing. And we're specifically going to be talking about free ways to grow your author platform, because your author platform essentially is growable in lots and lots of different ways. And we're always looking at, if we're just starting out, we're looking at setting it up, and then for the rest of our publishing days, we're always trying to grow it and scale it. So yes, I will begin by just kind of giving a definition. You will hear lots of different definitions of author platform, but for me, the most succinct one that I've come to after lots of discussions and lots of thinking about it over the years is that it is a structure that you use to sell your books, specifically a structure that an author brand uses to sell books. So if you've got more than one author brand, you will have to construct probably more than one platform, and they will cross-reference and help each other a bit, but not hugely. So essentially, it is whatever you use goes into this kind of form that you have that creates an author platform. And sometimes people think it's just about social media. So you'll very often hear people saying author platform is your social media accounts. Well, yes, but not necessarily. So social media is absolutely a component of the author platform for most people, but it is possible to construct and grow an author platform and not be on social media. But you need, obviously, to know exactly what you're doing and what you're using instead. The reason so many indie authors use social media is because, again, to the topic of today's conversation, it's free. The organic growth is free anyway, though social media advertising is obviously a big part of things too. But yeah, what other components are there or can there be of an author platform, Dan?
Yeah, so like you said, social media is easy and free, but it's not the only thing that's free that can be encapsulated within the umbrella of an author platform. So, for example, it's basically all of the people that you can reach and influence. It doesn't have to be just on social media. It can be, throughout the world in different various forms. So, politicians is one example. So they bring out books, and the books often go into the bestseller charts, and they do very well. And their platform would encapsulate contacts in the news where they can get themselves interviews. They've got different distribution contacts and business leaders that they know who can endorse them. And obviously they often know quite a lot of celebrities. In the same way, there's TV chefs. They've got a slightly different form of a platform because they've got reality TV shows where they do breakfast cooking shows and things like that, where they can sort of talk about their book. And they've also got social media, and they often write a news column on cooking in different newspapers and things like that. So yeah, they're very different business models to the average indie, but that is a route that you can take as an indie, as you can sort of cherry pick bits and pieces from different people's platforms and encapsulate it within yours. So yeah, we typically go for social media just because it's easy, but you've also got to remember that there's the email list that you can tap into, because again, once you're hosting there, the hosting cost is very, very small, and that's just a part of your business that packs a lot of power, because you can reach the people on your email list with quite a potent connection. So a lot of those people will convert into sales, and you can mobilize them in different ways, which we'll get onto in a little bit. And then you've also got to think about the contacts that you can have with influencers. So right now, we've got different contacts in the influencer sphere within the book trade, and they don't necessarily have to be mainstream celebrities. They can just be people with podcasts or people with blogs, or all these different types of personalities. And all of these people that you can reach, whether they're influencers or not, all come under the author platform umbrella.
Exactly. So it's a cross really between who you reach as a writer and who you reach as a publisher. So if you went to a trade publisher, if a trade publisher buys your book, the first thing they will do when it comes to around to marketing time is you will sit down with the publicist and they will ask you all sorts of questions, which add up to who do you know, and who can you get access to, and how can we let as many people as possible know about this book so that they can tell their people. And that's essentially what your platform is. It's your impact crossed by your publisher's reach, what your publisher brings to it and what you as a writer bring to it. And in a sense, you are both the writer and the publisher. So you're putting those two together in order to grow your platform. And with each book, as you work more and as you add to your social media presence or your email list or your media list of influencers or whatever it is, with each book and with the more work you do on your first book and with each book that you add to it, you're growing and strengthening your platform all the time, so that by the time you get to book 3 or 4, you actually have a platform that you can stand on and reach a lot more people than right now when you're at the beginning and you're starting off and it all seems very daunting. So right now at the beginning, every person you bring into your orbit, every person who hears about you that didn't know about you before, everybody is adding to that platform, be it a reader, be it a blogger, whoever it might be. You just take every opportunity to let more people know that you exist. And this is something that a lot of beginner authors find challenging. But if you think of it in terms of building your author platform for your books, rather than I'm megaphoning myself as a writer, as a person, it can be easier. So author platform can be a useful concept to kind of hold in your mind as you go out there. Does this activity that I'm contemplating grow my platform? How does it grow my platform? If I spent the same amount of time over here doing something else, would I get more benefit from it? So today we're concentrating on time. We're not looking at anything where you invest money, because money can be a shortcut on time. But today we're going to look exclusively at time.
Yeah, that's not to say that money can fast track everything in every way that you want, because a lot of it will be dependent on time anyway. So, for example, to get people really invested in your author platform so that you can reach them and the message gets through so they will do things that are favorable for your career, often readers in particular need to have read your book, or media contacts will need to know that you've got a history of success behind you before they consider you a serious contact that they'll manufacture into a position where you can broadcast yourself. So often that just takes time for lots of readers to read your book and word of mouth. And yeah, over time, the way I look at it, and Orna will tell anyone that I'm a big advocate for spreadsheets.
Mr. Spreadsheet. You are looking at Mr. Spreadsheet.
So yeah, you can very easily quantify your author platform over time by every time you go to a networking event or every time you add some people on social media. You can put them all into spreadsheets in different columns and then organize, that you can chart the size of your platform over time.
Great. And I like to think of it conceptually as having 4 pillars kind of holding up this platform of yours. In one corner, you've got your branding and your marketing, and that's a general sort of promise to the reader, as it were, so that when they look at your branding, they look at your books, they look at your website, they understand what kind of book you are putting out there, and they know immediately, this is for me, this isn't for me. And that applies to media, applies to influencers, as well as straightforward readers. So branding and marketing is one of your pillars. Your own personal influence and authority. Lots of people come to writing later on in life, or they have day jobs, or they have friends in high places, or whatever. you know, in your life, you will have some influence and some authority. If that crosses over with your author brand, then that becomes part of your author platform. The third pillar that kind of upholds things are your keen readers. And again, this takes a bit of time. If you're just at the very beginning, you probably, you know, feel like that's something you won't have, but you will find as you put your books out there that you will reach some readers who love everything you do, really get your work and really want to tell people about it. And they are actually, over time, that is the group of people that are the most influential. Everybody in trade publishing talks about the famous word of mouth as the only thing that really sells books, and, you know, real enthusiasm where a reader recommends to their reading that you are going to love this and kind of shoves it into their hand. Sometimes your keen readers buy your books and pass them on to people, you know, so they are number three. And then your own promotion work. Every promotion you do, every time you put the book out there, every time you're actually doing you know, any kind of promotional activity, as opposed to the marketing, which is kind of there and static all the way along. The promotions are kind of time-based and short spurts where you put energy behind a particular book. Then that is kind of the fourth pillar. So if you're constantly aware of those four pillars and keeping your attention on one of the four, then you are building your platform. And as one grows, they all tend to be uplifted.
Yeah, what you've got to be careful of, though, is actually juggling back and forth, because if you neglect one for too long, then it can have a hazardous effect on the others long term, because you may sort of hamstring yourself in your ability to reach certain people by not tending to a certain part of your platform. So yeah, we've got some actionable tips that we can use to nurture all four different pillars. So I'll just start with branding and marketing for now. So the best way to brand and market yourself is to produce good, consistent, and congruent content. So that's basically content that has the same color palette and the same tone all the way through everything. So, you know, and it's obviously got to be consistently high quality. Otherwise, people who started off as fans will assume that you've dropped your standards and then sort of fallen off the wagon, and they may disappear. So the only way to keep them engaged is to keep producing good content. Now, in terms of the personal influence and the authority, you need to maintain the same vital activities that are intrinsic to your identity. So with a celebrity that writes books on medicine and medical health, they may be a practicing doctor. And then in order to stay relevant and to prove that they've got the credentials to keep writing their books and to attract the right audience, they will need to continue to be a practicing doctor or continue to be in a position that shows them as having a hand in medicine. You know, they could be on a chat show where they're constantly doing research in that area and providing expertise. So yeah, and then obviously they'll promote themselves on social media just to reaffirm the fact that they are an expert in their field. So they're maintaining this personal influence and a sense of authority. In terms of the fan activities, you said the keen readers, then you want to engage and mobilize them often. So yeah, you'll be showing them the content that you're producing over time. But on top of that, you occasionally want to put an ask into the equation and ask them to do things, because your fans collectively have a lot more reach than you do, and that extends your author platform out to new fans and brings them in. So yeah, often that will be something like every time you review a book, you may ask your fans if they can leave reviews, because the more reviews you've got, the more it attracts new readers. Or you may want them to buy into a Kickstarter to invest in your career or something. And as we all know from Brandon Sanderson recently, that has done wonders for his word of mouth virality. He's been on every major newspaper, you know, and things like that. So he's done very well out of mobilizing his keen fans. And then when it comes to book promotions, this is not so much always on the front list. So yes, you will be promoting new books as they come out, but the promos tend to be on backlist titles. So you'll be doing short 99-cent promotions on the ebooks, and then possibly organizing newsletter swaps with different authors, so that you're constantly in front of the eyes of readers that have possibly been around for a long time and noticed your books, but they haven't had enough of the 7 touches, in, to use a marketing term, to realize that they like your books and they recognize you as a brand. So that all of these 4 different pillars together, if you keep nurturing them and just doing those core activities, then it will grow your author platform over time.
And you at the beginning, this can sound really daunting, and particularly when we're talking about backlist titles and, you know, lots of keen readers and Kickstarters and all this kind of thing. You know, what we're talking about here is these are some examples of what will unfold and develop as you grow. So it's not like you have to turn around and do all of this at once. Absolutely not. The point is, though, that you are keeping the author platform in mind, and you're keeping those 4 pillars in mind, and you're keeping the balance there. And some of these activities, particularly around your email list and, you know, the promotions of backlist titles and so on, are ideally set up to be sort of evergreen. So, you know, once a quarter or once a month, you do such and such, and, you know, that is a task for you. And I think it's really important as you build your author platform that you're choosing. We're throwing out all kinds of examples here, and not in any way to say you have to do all these things. These are just to give you lots and lots of ideas around the different things that you can do. When you come to making the choice, it's really key and important that you choose things that you enjoy and forget about the rest. So you won't and can't do everything it's possible to do as an indie author to build your platform. So the problem for most authors is not that they don't know that certain things are good to do. It's that there are so many things they don't know which one to do. And in that, it can be really helpful to just filter it through 2 core things that you want to have as an indie author. One is your passion, that you actually enjoy it, and it's part of what kind of furthers your whole reason for writing in the first place. And the other is profit. You know, it's most likely to be successful and to bring you what you're looking for in terms of outcome for your books. And so when you consider a particular platform building activity, to just run it through those 2 filters, and wherever those 2 meet most strongly, in other words, whatever gives you most satisfaction and most income, that's the one to go with.
Yeah, I think at the start of your career, what you've got to remember is that you don't know a lot and you don't know what you don't know. So all of these examples that we've given earlier on, they are just examples, and they're coming from prominent figures. So they're obviously at an advanced position in their career. So what you'll often find is that when you first start out, you can just cherry pick some of the simpler things that you could do. And then once you've learned those early skills and you're able to do them on a sort of routine basis, then you can stack on top of those skills with slightly more advanced things, and you'll understand different terms and things when you're reading articles to learn the next bit in your career to take it to the next level. So yeah, it's something that is a learning curve on top of a learning curve, and it's a long-term mindset. You don't need to do it all in the first month. As long as you get it in the first 10 years, you're probably fine.
Definitely. And, you know, to begin, think about your covers and your website. I think if you have nothing else at the moment, if you're on your first book or you've just finished your first book, begin there. You know, obviously, we don't talk in these sessions about writing. Obviously, that's a whole other podcast. Making sure the book is good enough. That's a whole other series of podcasts, and that's absolutely essential. But we're always going on the basis that you've done that core writing work. So then you begin with the next stage. So the writing and the editorial. After that comes the design, and so having a brand deck, for so that wherever you appear across the internet, and your book cover and the card that you hand to somebody if you meet them in the street, and if you have a brochure or a bookmark or any of these things, your website, that your colors are consistent, that your language and tone that you use on your website matches what's on your books. It sounds obvious, but look at some author websites and just see where that so often just doesn't happen. having a consistent bio, that, you know, a one-liner and a paragraph bio that explains who you are and where your books come from and where you're going, kind of thing. Perhaps a logo, any graphics that you're using to promote your book. All of this should be consistent so that people, Dan spoke about the 7 touches earlier, this marketing term. Us as authors, we can get sick of ourselves and our book pretty quickly. We're creatives. We like to move on to the next thing. But in marketing terms, people have to see you quite a bit before you land, before they begin to recall your brand name, you know, what your books are about, all of that. It takes time for it to sink in. So the more consistent you can be in creating your brand and in creating your platform, the better.
Yeah, so it's a brand deck. So if anyone's not really familiar with that term, that's a marketing term that design teams use. Just to, you know, you can collect everything in one place. So you've got your package of your bios and your core colors for your brand and the fonts you use and things like that. And if you use that across everything, then you know, even if you're outsourcing to different designers and things because you want help creating these materials, then you've got the core information that you can just give a new designer and they will run with it and keep everything consistent. That's a lot better than, like you said, Orna, some examples of authors, and I've been, you know, a culprit in this myself, where you've started a book series and you've got one cover designer and the book looks great, and then you've decided to change a cover further down the line and you haven't changed all of the covers in the series consistently, and you know, you haven't updated your website in a few years and you've got a different bio there to somewhere else, and at some point in your career you may have been focusing on a different aspect of your professional life when promoting yourself. So yeah, if you keep everything consistent, then the people that have followed you from one social media platform or something to another will feel that it's the same person and you're actually speaking to them still and not to a completely different audience.
Yes, and people get confused very easily. So this is why if you have more than one series, and I mean, we're talking to beginners here, so you're unlikely to be at that point yet. But if you do end up with different books and things, separating things out as much as possible makes a lot of sense. And then once you have that brand deck in place and that consistent kind of look and feel, and you are clear about what the value that your books offer and the kind of readers that you're looking for, then produce content that kind of shows your work on your website and draws people into your email funnel. And this is the single most important thing you'll do to build your platform over years. And at the beginning, it can feel a little, you know, daunting when you are trying to build your email list and you're getting very few signups and then, you know, unsubscribes, and you're finding it difficult to find the tone of your newsletter and make sure it matches your books and your website. And you can just switch off and decide not to go any further. And it is a challenge. And it's a publishing challenge that needs to be overcome, because honestly, as an indie author, without this in place, you need, if people come to your website, that you give them something to do. They need to know what you want them to do next. And whatever you want them to do next should be a platform building, obviously, activity. And so for most of us, a sensible thing to do is to give them some content in return for their email address, and then begin that process of engaging them and satisfying them, and in time completely delighting them. That's essentially what you're aiming for, so that they stick around because they enjoy and look forward to getting a newsletter from you each month or each quarter, or however often you decide you want to be in touch with them.
If this actually sounds like a less savory activity for you, because I know some people don't like the marketing aspects of sending out newsletters and social media and things, then if you're quite a personable, extroverted person, then you can obviously go down different routes. So one thing that a lot of people do, even starting out fresh, you can network with other authors and book trade professionals. So this is one way to build your platform, is to actually make contacts in the same way that we talked about politicians having high profile contacts earlier on. So yeah, you could just go to local writers groups, or you could go to the big international trade publisher fairs, like the London Book Fair or the Hong Kong Book Fair or Frankfurt, wherever you want to go, wherever you are in the world. And then with that, you will learn from other people in the industry, so you'll get better at the marketing aspect of it because of the immersion of talking to other people who are good at it. And obviously you'll also have your own personal contacts that you can keep in touch with and then call upon when you need to mobilize them to help you with launches and things, which is all part of your platform.
And another way to practice when you're starting out is to go local. Call into the local indie bookstore, have a conversation with them and so on. Any way that you can kind of practice building your platform and getting comfortable with the activities that are necessary for platform building, just take it, dive in and do it.
Yeah, you don't have to be talking on stage in front of thousands of people to attract them all at once. If you turn up to an event or you go to a bookshop and you get, one bookstore manager's name and contact details, that's already growing your platform beyond where it was before. So yeah, it's just a one step at a time, and it exponentially builds the power of your launches as your platform grows.
Great. So to finish, we have a few resources for you on the ALLi blog, and we will add these to the show notes on the podcast. Podcast post comes out on selfpublishingadvice.org every Friday, and it has the show notes that accompany this. And so we have the ultimate guide to building a solid author platform is there. Also a post on how do I grow my email list. That was a question that was asked recently on our member Q&A and answered by myself and Michael Oran, which might be useful to you. And then we have a whole guide to building mailing lists, which we would see really as the core author platform activity. So it's the ultimate guide to mailing lists for authors, parts 1, 2, and 3, because there's a lot to getting it right, and those posts break it down into its constituent parts. And literally, if you just follow that advice, if you haven't started yet, if you follow that advice step by step, or if you have started and it's not working for you, the steps will show you where things have perhaps broken down for you and how you can fix them. So that is it for this week. As ever, send your questions through to us, info@allianceindependentauthors.org. If we can help you in any way, we will be delighted to do that. So next time, Dan, have we got a plan for what we're talking about next time for our beginners?
We probably do, but not off the top of my head.
I have put you on the spot, so my apologies. Okay, no worries. We will be back next time on the second Tuesday of the month. We're having a swap around this month because Joanna Penn is in Arizona. So we're here on the usual advanced authors slot this week, or this month. So next month, June, we'll be back in the second Tuesday of the month for our beginners. But until then, happy writing and publishing. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.